I'm Liana, and this is The Serendipitous Life. So today I'm going to be making one of the most comforting, but also one of the most controversial types of Creole Southern foods that you can possibly make, and that is gumbo. There are as many gumbo recipes as there are chefs who make gumbo. It is by far the most debated on how it should be made. So the gumbo recipe that I'm making today is a chicken and sausage gumbo. It can be altered to be a seafood gumbo very easily, or you can just add seafood to the chicken and sausage base. First, I have to tell you a funny little story. So many years ago, well, let me rewind, tell you about myself. I come from a family who are Yankees through and through. My mom is from the Netherlands, my grandmother's from the Netherlands, my dad is originally from California but was raised in Chicago, but he is also Dutch by ethnicity. We have a few other little things mixed in there like most, Americans do, but for the most part my family's Dutch. So that means we are meat and potatoes. We use seasoning, but it's like very bland. It's not a lot of spicy kind of stuff. So growing up here on the coast, even though I was born and raised here, we didn't really eat Creole, Southern, or Cajun foods. The most seafood I ever got was Captain D's on during Lent on Fridays, and occasionally we ate catfish. But that was really the descent of how much, or extent of how much seafood we ate. Now, as I started getting older, I had friends who liked those types of foods. And so I was very open-minded and I liked trying new things. So my very, very best friend, Denise, she is from New Orleans. Her dad is, or God rest his soul, her dad was a cook in the Navy. He also cooked offshore. Now, offshore cooks are very, very particular on the way they eat. They are feeding strapping men who are working hard all day. They want hearty, hearty foods. Well, her dad was known for his seafood gumbo. Well, my best friend went into the Navy and became a cook just like her dad. And it was kind of funny, she came back on leave, and I'm guessing we were about 18, 19 years old at the time. And I decided that I was going to make her some gumbo. I knew nothing about gumbo. I had never even had gumbo. I kind of looked up some recipes. I talked to a few people on how to make it, but I really did not know what I was doing. The main thing I knew was that you had to make a roux. I knew how to make a roux because it's pretty much the same thing that my mom does to make gravy for biscuits and gravy. The only difference is she wouldn't cook it as long to get that dark brown roux. It was more like a milk gravy, but it's the same concept. So I knew how to make a roux, and I put the most oddball things in it. So I made the roux, I don't even remember what all I put in it, but it was basically this hot as Hades stew. It had corn in it. Nobody puts corn in gumbo. It had tomatoes in it. Occasionally you'll see people put tomatoes in gumbo, but not usually. It had all the others, onions, celery, peppers, all that kind of stuff. But I probably put a whole bottle of Tabasco sauce in that shit. It was so hot. We had a party that night, and people were tasting the gumbo, and they were trying to be nice to me. They were trying not to hurt my feelings, but it was way too spicy and it was just bizarre. But people ate it. And then honestly, like, people kind of teased me a little bit about it, but I was like, whatever. Well, years later, my best friend told me that when I made that gumbo for her, that it warmed her heart so much that even though it was ridiculous, she didn't say this part, but even though it was ridiculous on what all was in it, and it really was not very good gumbo, she just thought it was the sweetest thing in the world. So I'm going to show you now a gumbo recipe that I have adapted from a restaurant in New Orleans called Coop's Place. I have their recipe book. Probably not fair for me to share the exact recipe, but I'm gonna give you my recipe on how I make it, because it is totally different. Theirs is a seafood, mine is chicken and sausage. So it is different, but a lot of the ingredients are the same, but I kind of, you know, change it up just a little bit. I do have to give you the preface that I have been making this particular gumbo now for many, many years. It is nothing like that first gumbo. Now, usually I make this for parties. I tend to seem to always make it around Christmas time. And as you see, it's Christmas. I guess it's warm and it makes you feel cozy inside. But this recipe is delicious and you will not regret making this gumbo.
So I'm going to start off with some Himalayan sea salt, as well as some garlic, which is granulated garlic that's mixed with pepper, and some minced garlic. You could use fresh. Fresh is probably better, but I had this on hand. And we're going to add this to the Instapot with the raw whole chicken. We are going to basically be making a chicken soup base for the base of this gumbo. You can use the same base if you're going to make chicken and dumplings. You can use the same base if you're going to be making something like chicken noodle soup, chicken and rice soup. I'm adding some carrots into this. I'm going to add a whole onion, skins and all. We'll take those and strain them off at the end. And I'm also adding some dehydrated celery. I didn't have any fresh, but I had some dehydrated, so I'm adding that to it. The liquid will reconstitute that celery. Now we're going to cook this chicken in the Instant Pot. When the chicken is done, we will take it out and strain off all of the carrots and onions. You want to make sure that your lid is locked tight. We're going to cook this for 20 minutes. As I said, when it's done, we'll take out the chicken, we'll take out the other things and strain that broth. Once that's been done, you're going to start seasoning your broth. Now I'm adding some Bayou Blend. It is a blend that you can purchase. You can actually make yourself and the recipe is in the Coop's Place cookbook. I would recommend going to their website and purchasing the cookbook. I'm not going to share their recipe for free. I've been making this blend for quite some time. It's quite delicious. I did about 4 tablespoons of the seasoning blend. Now, if you don't have that seasoning blend recipe and you don't want to buy it, you can easily just use Tony's. To me, it's not as good, but in a pinch, it works fine. Now, I'm going to be adding some Worcestershire. It's going to be a tablespoon. Now I've got my homemade hot sauce that I fermented. The video is in my files here on YouTube. You can go back and watch that video. I'm doing about a tablespoon of hot sauce in there. You can easily use something like Tabasco if you'd like, or your favorite pepper sauce. I put a few little bay leaves in there. Those are fresh from out in my garden. Next, I'm going to add some thyme. We're going to put 1 tablespoon of thyme. Of course, you can do fresh if you like, but I have dried, so that's what I will be using. Now I'm going to be adding more garlic to the mix, just a couple of tablespoons. And we're going to be doing our Trinity mix. So you can easily chop up your own onions, celery, and bell pepper very easily. It's about 2 onions, 2 bell pepper, and about 5 stalks of celery. I didn't feel like cutting it up, so I bought the pre-cut stuff. It also has parsley in there, and I'm adding more of my dehydrated celery to the mix, just because I want a little more celery. Now we're going to be setting this for another, I think it's 15 minutes. Now while that is cooking, I'm going to make my roux. I got 1 stick of butter in an iron skillet. I took out 1 cup of flour because I wasn't sure how much I was going to need, but I believe I ended up doing about 3/4 cup of flour to the mix. You want to do this on low. On my stove, I think I did it at about 2.5. I melted the butter first and browned it slightly, and then I started adding the flour to the mix. And you just want to stir it really good and keep it moving. You don't want to let this sit for any period of time. This is your basic roux. So here are the many stages as it goes. You just want to keep it stirring. This is after a couple minutes. This is after a few minutes longer. It's a little darker. And then finally, you will see you want it to be about the color of peanut butter. And that's your perfect thing. Now you're going to pour this directly into your pot. You want to be very careful. It is going to sizzle. It's going to bubble. But you're going to stir this straight into your simmering broth. So once you get it stirred in, you want to give it a nice mix. And we're going to let this simmer for a few minutes while we are deboning our chicken. You want to make sure you remove the skin, get the bones out, and you just want to leave this in fairly large chunks. we're going to be doing our sausage. A lot of times, most people will use an andouille sausage. That's usually what I like, but the boys won't eat it if it's too spicy. So this is a different sausage. It's got a bit of spice, but it's not too hot at all. And you want to just do these in small little slices so that it's bite size and it's not too big of a bite when you're actually eating your gumbo. And then you're going to add this to the pot. Now, our controversial ingredient, gumbo filet. This is a thickener. It is sassafras root. Many people do not believe in gumbo filet. I personally like it. I think it enriches your flavor even more. Now I'm going to let this go for another 10 minutes in the Instant Pot. If you're doing it on the stove, just let it simmer for about 20-30 minutes. And you have a most delicious gumbo here. A lot of times people put okra in it. I personally like okra. Not everybody does. I just didn't have any. And you're going to put it over rice. Some people like a lot. I personally don't like a lot of rice. This is Allison's bowl. She likes a lot of rice.
So the gumbo was a hit. Normally I would put okra in it. Allison, she hates okra. She'll eat it if it's in there. I just didn't have any okra and I forgot to get it at the store. And I did not grow any this year in the garden. So the boys, well, Elliot, he doesn't eat anything. The kid lives off chicken nuggets and potato chips. But Liam has gotten to where he's very open-minded in what he eats, and he loved the gumbo. Usually what I'll do is I'll put a bed of rice down and I'll just drain off the juice and I'll give him like the chicken and the sausage and the vegetables. And I did that tonight, but then he saw me eating mine. He goes, "Mommy, what is that soup?" And so I said, "Well, that's the broth. Do you want to taste it?" And he tasted it and he loved it. And so I went ahead and I got him a bowl of broth and we mixed it in and he ate a great big bowl of it. Made my heart just sing that the baby ate the gumbo. Even though when he was a baby, he did eat it all the time. He just doesn't remember it. But so yeah, family loved it. Now we will be eating this gumbo for a couple of days. Made such a huge pot. Honestly, we will probably eat it tomorrow night. And that'll probably be it. And then I'm going to probably freeze the rest. That's usually what I do. And then we'll have it again sometime around February. We'll have it again when it's cold. The longer it sits, the better it is. In fact, a very good friend of mine, when she got married, she loves my gumbo, her and her husband. And she asked me to make it for her wedding. And so I actually made the gumbo a couple weeks ahead of time and froze it, defrosted it for the wedding. And it's just so much better. It's like it has time for those seasonings to really kind of marinate in there and set in, kind of like spaghetti and lasagna. It's one of those that you can make ahead of time and it is awesome. Of course, you're not gonna make the rice ahead of time, that you're gonna make fresh. So I really hope you try this recipe and I really hope you leave me feedback on if you liked it or not, what you would do different. Not gonna hurt my feelings if you don't like it, but I think you will. So please hit like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, and God bless our mess.